Call the meeting to order.
Meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
And a roll call.
President Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Renucci. Commissioner Arndt. Commissioner Batani.
Here.
Commissioner Hayes. Commissioner Leaderhouse.
Here.
And Morath. Thank you.
All right, we'll start with citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the Plan Commission during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject can be anything, whether on the agenda or not. The Plan Commission should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they're participating in a public hearing or if specifically allowed by a majority vote of the Plan Commission due to involvement in an agenda item. And we do have a few public hearings, so if you're here to speak on that, you can now or at that point. That said, Mary or anyone else? You good? All right, we'll close citizen participation. Item 6, approve Plan Commission minutes of May 9th, 2022.
Motion to approve minutes is presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, sign permit for a wall sign for Sammy's Place located at 2079 Division Street, ROP 00065 in the Downtown Design District. Sam Bessler applicant, application 2021-23. Tim? There's Sam. That's okay.
We just turned it down. I'm sorry, you missed it.
Okay, so just real quickly, and I'm glad the petitioner's here. Staff report dated June 7th, 2022. So this is a property in the Downtown Design District, and the petitioner is asking for signage, and that is reviewed under the development standards for the design district. And you can clarify, but essentially there is an existing wall sign on the front of the building that's to be replaced, and gooseneck lights are to remain. And the projecting sign that's just perpendicular to that wall sign, that's going to be taken off.
The one that hangs across the sidewalk.
So, since we have people possibly for recording, can you come up to the podium? That's okay. So, yeah.
So
Yeah.
just,
Oh, geez. Hello. Okay. Is that a minute?
So
There's like a cream-colored Sammy's Place one I'd like to get rid of. And then the one that's against the building, currently, is the red one with the white, black lettering, white package of that.
It's the one attached to the face of the building.
Correct.
perpendicular one comes down, and then you're wanting to.
Yeah, the perpendicular one doesn't serve much of a purpose. Like it's just kind of sticks out in the middle of nowhere, and unless you're right on top of it, it's not really. In my opinion, it's more of just a standout eyesore than anything that's been there. So I just was looking to get rid of that, make the one in front look a lot nicer, and then add the one. You can see the black square that used to be a RJ's sign at one point. It's a little faded at this point, obviously, but I'd like to use that for an additional Sammy's Place sign, which is you see in the The picture that you have before that, there's to be, I would like to add 2 gooseneck lights to that as well, to match the ones that are in the front. The logo will not look like that, but will be, if you once again go to the previous, there you go, we'll, be incorporating that logo with just a background. I mean, it's not gonna be just a square and a black square. There is a little design that goes around the outside that, would be a border to make it look more like a sign than just a business card.
The sign, though, is not neon, or the lighting's coming from the gooseneck lights, not the sign is not lit itself.
Correct. Although I did think about doing a lighted sign, but it wouldn't be neon. It'd be like an LED thing, and of course I'd have to come and meet you guys again before I did that.
So Tim, I know you had some measurements and other things
Yeah.
you had to do.
So maybe we can take these one at a time. Maybe we can just talk about the sign on the front. And again, the projecting sign, the one that's perpendicular, that's to be, gone down.
Yeah.
The gooseneck
Am I allowed to
lighting-
remove that without permission, or do I have to keep that one there?
No. You
I can take that one, okay,
Yeah,
good.
take it out tomorrow if you want.
Appreciate it.
Okay, but, so, there are some concrete pilasters, or masonry pilasters, kind of framing. Maybe Eileen, if you could go to the
Yeah,
previous.
no, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
So that sign is still gonna be within those
Yep.
pilasters?
It's just, I literally just want the exact same size sign that's already there,
Okay,
just to replace the one that's been abused and battered over 15 years of business.
right. So essentially, that wall sign is permitted under the code. So the only thing that you're really looking at is the design of the sign area. Again, that's rendering of what that's gonna look like.
Yes, that will be, it will no longer look like the one that is currently there. It will have that as my logo.
Okay,
Within, an inch or two.
right.
But yes.
So basically, there's 25 feet of frontage roughly,
I was-
so that sign area does comply.
I was just told to estimate. I don't have the exact sign made yet, but yes.
It was 24'6". So, whole sign area does fit within that standard. Okay, so that's the first one. The other one is a little bit more complicated. And again, that's the one that was obviously, part of the previous business or previous business, I'm not sure. But essentially, that's the one on the
It's
side.
been there for 40 years. So like Ron's, all the businesses that have ever been there have had that as a sign.
Okay, maybe I can continue and then you can.
I'm so sorry. I apologize.
That's fine. So, essentially, it's a sidewall, and in the downtown design district, and basically all of the districts, we only allow wall signs on the front of the building. Essentially, that is a sidewall, and if Plan Commission determines that that is a sign that has been there forever, and it's non-conforming, meaning it was grandfathered, then it can be used for signage again. But it can't be enlarged, it can't be expanded, it can't be converted to anything other than what it is, and it can't have additional lighting. So, whatever size that is, again, if you determine that to be a sign, then that sign copy can be placed on it, and that's it.
Non-conforming extend to the fact that the square footage also exceed the frontage footage for the building?
It's non-conforming because it's not allowed in the first place. Wall signs on the side of a building are not currently permitted. Correct. And, I'm sure you guys know this, a lot better than I. At one time, it was a sign, but the question is, when was the last time it had any signed copy on it? I mean, at some point in time, you just kind of lose the purpose of the sign in the first place. So that's why, you need to determine if you believe that that's a non-conforming sign, and then whatever, copy you allow on the front can be put on the side. But again, without any lighting, without any enlargement.
You want it to be a sign without lighting?
I'll take what I can get. But, yes, going forward, I mean, if I aim for the stars, I would absolutely like it a little bit bigger, with some lighting on it, 'cause that just seems logical. But,
Maybe moved?
I'm sorry, what's
Or
that?
it's, we use the sign that's, puts a new sign up or whatever, it's gotta go in the same exact spot, or is they allowed to move it?
It's gotta stay where it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Just from a simple advertising business standpoint, like, that's a beautiful place to put a sign. You know, if you're looking at places to advertise your business, that would be a marquee spot to be able to put a sign. So that's really what I'm trying to accomplish here. It was there before. Once again, I would like to replace it. If I can't put lights on it, that's fine.
So Tim, Eileen, correct me if I'm wrong here. So if, sounds like the front one conforming, not a problem. The side one, if we really were to do it what Sam wants here, he really needs to come back with, we need to talk about an ordinance change to be able to do that. It's not something we can approve here tonight.
Well,
If you think
here again, if you determine that black piece of plywood essentially is a non-conforming sign.
What I'm talking about is if he wants to do it the way which is bigger, lighting, things like that.
Right.
The most we can approve for him tonight is to say, yeah, slap the same type of sign that you showed us for the front up there, but you can't light it. So I'm just saying that if that's the case and you're fine with that, okay, but if you're saying, well, I'm willing to invest more in effort and I really would like it to be a proper sign, then we go down that ordinance path, and that's a longer process that you'll have to work through with us. Is that correct?
Yes. And typically what we've done when somebody's proposing a text amendment like that, then essentially, they would be, fronting the cost to actually go through the process, to submit the application. And, just bear in mind that, that change would not only affect your property, but every other property that has commercial zoning on it, and that's the larger policy question. That's for another day.
But in the short term though, I mean, he could take a sign the same size as that black square, put it up there, and if he wants lighting in the future, come back and just deal with the lighting issue. Correct?
No, it would be more than that, because
I mean, in the future, he wouldn't be replacing the sign again, it would just be adding lights.
right. I mean, that's for another day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can't really
So, do you
talk
know-
about what ifs
Right.
right now, but
Do you know how big that square is? I mean, you're proposing
It's roughly 4 by
5
8,
Oh, 4 by 8?
sheet of plywood.
Okay. 'Cause you got 5 by 12 or 6 by 12
Wanted to
here.
go bigger and better. Yep.
So you'd be good with, we approved a sign?
If I can just
The
get
same
something
size?
up there, I'll be extremely happy to walk out of here tonight. And, I mean, obviously, I'd like to have more conversations about going forward to being able to put in, maybe a little bit bigger with some lights, and certainly not gaudy and take away from the attractiveness of the square big sign, but something a little bit along those lines at some point going forward. But tonight, it would be really, really sweet if I could get a Sammy's Place sign up there on that side. In the same spot, no bigger and non-lit.
So do you have lighting back there now?
I currently have lights on the side of the building that would, illuminate a little bit below it. There is a afterglow effect, I guess, the pattern of luminescence or whatever from the lights I have on the beer garden do kind of go up and down, but it certainly isn't like a gooseneck spotlight focused on the sign or anything like that.
So I would rather see a sign on that wall. There has been a sign there for as long as I've been in East Troy.
Since
I would rather see-
since the building
Since
burnt
Ronald-
down.
Yes, exactly. I would rather see a sign in place of the black box. So I would be willing to approve, as he proposed, to put a sign in place of the black box. And his concession is he's taking down the perpendicular one and cleaning up the front. So I personally don't have a problem with him putting a sign in the exact spot.
I agree with you, Chris.
So if you're so inclined, I think there would be two separate motions. The one is to approve the wall sign on the front
I will,
as being compliant. And then the second motion would basically, recognize that the sign on this sidewall is non-conforming and that the petitioner is allowed to change the copy on there, no lighting, and no larger than what exists. Just to clarify and separate things out. Because we want to have a record for why, this sign on the sidewall was permitted. And somebody else comes in and says, well, he got it, well, why can't I? And, we just need to document that in the minutes so that there's a record.
Is it technically non-conforming if it's grandfathered in? I guess I'm a little confused.
It's one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's connotations of it like not being allowed right now, so that's the only reason why I was wondering.
Right.
It's actually called legal non-conforming, so that's the technical
Gotcha.
term for grandfathered.
Thanks, Eileen.
Non-conforming, but it's okay.
Sweet.
You're smart, you never took it down.
Yeah. Cheers.
Entertain a motion. Two motions, actually.
so I will motion to approve the sign on the front of the building as specified in the documents.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the sign replacement on the side of the building, the south side of the building, in the exact same spot, same location, same size as what's there, currently grandfathered in without lighting and any other changes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks,
Good to go.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night. All right, item 8, site plan amendment for new lumber storage building, 9,000 square feet for property located at 2624 Corporate Circle, A4003-00001. Accurate Housing Systems applicant Fred Carlson, agent. Application 2022-19.
Well, I don't see the applicant here. So I'm not quite sure what you want to do. This is pretty straightforward. But I received multiple emails from the agent saying it's going to be on the agenda. Be on the agenda? Yep. It's going to be on the agenda? Yep. Reminder. So, So essentially, this is a pre-existing business. They have an approval, site plan approval that has a rather large outdoor storage area. They want to take a small or relatively small portion of the property to enclose lumber that's being used inside of the building for manufacturing trusses and so on. The area is currently hard surfaced, so there's no change in stormwater flow because of the project. Aside from that, it meets all the, height restrictions and so on and so forth, impervious surface. Okay to make a motion to approve it as proposed.
We some time ago, we approved the area for storage of materials when they came to us for that, at that time. They wanted to put a building up, but they couldn't afford it. So they were allowed to store it outside without the building, and now they want to put the building up.
You making a motion?
Yeah, I will. I'll make a motion to approve the site plan and the plan of operation for the project consisting of the 9,000 square foot building as set forth in the submittal documents, provided one paragraph that the village engineer verifies that the stormwater management plan approved in 2016 is in place and operational. And paragraph 2, the petitioner obtains a zoning permit from the zoning administrator prior to any land disturbing activity related to this project.
Where did you get all that? Exactly. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Item 9, amend conditional use to include outdoor events and pavilion for property located at 2511 Main Street, RA 2702-00001, LD's Barbecue, Leon Davis owner, application 2022-17. So I will open the...
So maybe what we can do is just kind of table this, and hopefully Leon will be here.
Okay.
And just go on to the next
All
item.
right, we'll table it till later in the
Okay.
agenda and come back. All right, item 10, amend site plan / plan of I'm sorry? Oh, is this also, yep, thank you. Item 11, amend the village's comprehensive plan by changing the land use classification of two properties, RLC 0002 and RLC 0003 from general commercial to general industrial. Applicant John Tyson, agent, application 2022-22. Tim?
So John is here. Hi, John. So the petitioner has submitted an application again to amend the comprehensive plan. The properties are identified, and the properties are currently vacant, and they're actually part of a condominium. So that's kind of a backstory. A little hard to see, but in the far northwest corner of where it says unit number 2 is a small parcel, and that's just a common element for the condominium. And maybe, John, you can provide some details about why that common element is there. But essentially, what we're looking at is what's identified as Unit 2 and Unit 3. The intent is to put an light industrial building on the property, and it is currently shown as commercial on the comprehensive plan. So before any rezoning is submitted, the comp plan has to be changed. And what you're doing is making a recommendation to the village board, and the village board holds the public hearing. And we have to, get public hearing notice in. So the desire is to hold a public hearing at the July village board meeting. July Plan Commission meeting, if this goes forward, then I think they might be coming forward with some more details about their project. The intent is to merge the two existing parcels into one and present a site plan for an industrial building with parking and other related procedures.
Do you have any questions for John or Tim?
Motion to recommend the village board approval of the resolution dated June 6, 2022, based on findings contained in the draft resolution.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. John? All right, item 12, amend the zoning code to establish a central business transition CBT district and related matters, application 2022-15. I will open public hearing on this. Anyone would like to speak, provide comment? Going once? Going twice? All right. Close the public hearing. Now, this was previously approved by the map was previously approved by the village board. Is that right, Tim?
So this draft that you have here was reviewed at the last Plan Commission meeting, and we carried it over to this meeting for the public hearing. But yeah, I mean, this ordinance has been, in process for quite a while. And I should mention that, even though nobody's here from the public, letters were sent out early on to all the property owners saying that we're in the works of doing this. We went through a comprehensive plan change. So, that's just, context for what you're doing here. So that effort was made and everybody was notified. There were some early on comments, whatever. And those, many of those comments were, resulted in changes to the zoning ordinance at that time.
Tim, could you just kind of give us a slight overview of the difference between central business and then the transition? Why we're doing one to the other?
Sure. If you're looking at page 8 of the ordinance, there's the map. And it shows, and hopefully you have a color one. Perfect. So you can see, the current extent of the commercial business district, and that's being pared down because many of the buildings that are currently in the central business district really don't front on the square, and they really don't comply with or meet the intent of the design standards for the for the downtown. So the commercial district is getting smaller, and so is the design review area. And again, the area around the perimeter is the central business transition district, and that's to allow some commercial that's going to be consistent with the residential character of the area.
Give an example. I guess my question would be like somebody with a hair salon on their property.
Yep. So there's a real good example that, exists today, is there's a tax accountant with a residential unit on the same property, and I can't recall the streets, but we walked by it and we said that's an example of what we're talking about. So if anybody knows that, just shout it out.
Union and Division.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's a good example. Obviously, you can't have commercial on each and every property because they may not be big enough. But again, the intent is to, over time, to allow property owners, at their discretion to, kind of expand the commercial core of the village, which would only help and support the commercial business district.
Just ask this question for the record, because we've had people concerned about if they are residential, that this would change their taxes or anything like that, and the answer to that is no.
Correct. Zoning does not affect property taxes at all.
And I guess the question I had again, though, was that the reason that you took away the central business district from some of the properties in the outlying areas because they did not front the square?
I think that's a short answer, yes.
Are they still subject to the design overlay?
No.
Okay.
If you look at the design standards for that district, it shows a picture of the old storefronts, stacked next to each other. And, that applies to, a lot of the properties on the square. But once you get off the square, then they're kind of isolated buildings. And that same design, look just isn't there. So it's like, well, how do you deal with those? Why should the property owner have to come to us in the first place? And then we're like, well,
Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the village board the approval of the proposed ordinance as drafted 2022-07.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
I'm going to abstain because I own a house in that area.
All right. Item 13, amend the zoning code to establish a mixed business/light industrial design overlay district and related matters, application 2022-16. I will open this public hearing. Like comment. Going once? Going twice? Okay, we'll get you a shirt or a button that says that, Mary.
I should have clarified by saying nobody's here speaking on the matter. How's that?
All right, I will close the public hearing on this item. Tim, any other items or things to discuss on this?
Again, this is a draft that started back in 2019, 2018-19, kind of lay dormant for a while. It was resurrected. We went through various iterations, and again, at the last Plan Commission meeting, you reviewed it and then recommended that we hold a public hearing, and here we are.
We'll make a motion to approve, application 2022-16.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 14, discussion related to potential revisions to the Village Zoning Code, Chapter 510, with regard to residential driveway standards and parking lot design. Tim?
Again, this was a matter that was discussed at the last meeting. The bulk of the changes are on page 2 of the draft ordinance, essentially removing, any restriction or many of the restrictions, and all that we're left with is at the right-of-way line, the driveway can't be any wider than 24 feet. And the one outstanding variable is basically that angle of the taper from that right-of-way line back to the driveway garage area. I just had in, as a placeholder, 120 degrees on the first page of my staff report. I just did a little hand-drawn drawing showing the different degrees and what that might look like. So, again, there's no right or wrong answer to this, so we're just looking for some comment from you on what you think.
I have something I'd like to mention, that looking on the page 2 on the inside, I'm looking at the drawing of the maximum width of the apron at the street, and then you come into the right-of-way, correct? It's straight before the driveway makes an angle. And what I'm concerned about is if there are a lot of people in the village that have either a boat or they have a four-wheeler trailer or something that they want to back up, but if you try to back it up and make that curve and then make the other angle to come in alongside the garage, I'm thinking that you're going to need a little bit more angle on that where it breaks at the right-of-way. So this was a drawing that was based on the prior standards. And there we had, that 8-foot separation from the right-of-way before the start of the taper. So that distance is going away. Right. Okay, so I didn't want to, change the drawing until I knew what angle was going to be, recommended here. So, this diagram will be revised so that the taper can start at the right-of-way line. So. Correct me if I'm wrong now, is the right-of-way at the curb or is the right-of-way at where the break of the driveway starts to get larger?
It's at the front property boundary line.
Okay, here. I'm sorry, is this the right-of-way here? Or is it here? Because I always thought that the right-of-way was out past the curb into the grass. That's where a sidewalk would be put, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought this was the right-of-way.
No.
Okay, well, we don't have a sidewalk on the picture, that's why I'm asking.
Yep.
Because again, if this is the curb of the street where the car is, then normally the right-of-way would be at least 3 feet past the curb, would it not? In the village, is that what it usually is, Scott? Well, okay, I'm just saying, it goes past the edge of the street. So that's why I thought the right-of-way was where the break was.
Okay, so what I can do on this drawing is label the right-of-way line, so that there's, confusion, and thanks for the point of clarification.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point, trying to point out errors, but
No,
I'm going on that presumption then to look at that line, and where that break starts, where the driveway actually gets wider, I'm thinking, no, you said that's set at 120 degrees?
As drafted, yes.
Okay, and I'm thinking it should be 135.
I do see driveways by me that do the 135 right away, and they still have the gravel issue, yeah. So I don't know what angle we can propose besides, 180.
You know, you're absolutely right, but what surprised me though was the fact of, and I brought this up at our last meeting, and Scott said, we'll take that up at a different time, we're just talking about the driveway issue now. But I was talking about placing the home back farther, if, not so much if you have driveway access or garage access facing the street, but if your garage access was at 90 degrees from the street. And then I would think you'd have more of a problem to get around to be able to back in. So therefore, you would need more room. You would have to push the home back on the lot farther in order to allow them to have room to get in to their driveway, into the garage.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're trying to solve that here. Those are the exceptions to the norm here. So, I don't know where you all are in your discussion on this so far, but, I mean, do you want to go forward with 120? Do you want to go forward? I mean, that's your question, it sounds like, Tim. What do you want to go to the village board with?
I think my opinion would be to be at 150.
Roger, you gotta remember, we're eliminating the 8 foot from the right-of-way
Correct.
also, so I don't think we need
But I'm going
such-
off the driveways that I see that are at the 45 degrees, so it'd be at the 135.
But they have the
And the-
8 foot also taken into account.
No, these go
Then
right
they're-
from the sidewalk. No.
Driveway going all the way down to the street. I got it.
Sorry, Scott.
Well, the current ordinance hasn't been around that long, so what Roger's referring to, I believe, is there is an awful lot of them around that start right at the driveway before the ordinance was created. If you wanna see how the ordinance is now, you should take a drive around Lake Bluff subdivision. Lake Bluff.
Yeah, I mean, you remember Steve, Bartle, that's his issue now. He has a unique solution to it, which is rather clever, but,
I gave the idea.
yeah. But, so what angle is that over there in Lake Bluff? What angle have they poured those?
So I would like to see 150. I think that would be a good angle. Give them a little bit to play with.
I personally think that's a little too much,
100
especially with eliminating the 8 foot. I think the 135 to,
The picture shows
140.
140 max.
I'm correcting Tim.
I mean, I'd rather be a little more conservative here and have somebody come in and say, okay, I need to do this to solve a problem, and 135 or 140 is not sufficient for me, and then we go back and, and as opposed to just trying to all-encompassing. Because I'm a little concerned too about if you're doing it. Can you go back to the diagram? It was in the... Computer shows it. So before I start talking, I'll make sure the screen... Okay, there we go. So, Tim, what you're saying is that in this diagram, the right-of-way is the curb, or it is where the taper starts?
In that diagram where you see maximum width, that line above it is the right-of-way property boundary line.
So in this case, the curb. Now, what if I have, in this case, there's no sidewalk in this diagram. If I have a sidewalk, though,
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't- okay.
It's measured at the property boundary line.
and we're saying that you could come off with the taper right at the curb then?
Right at the property boundary line, whether there's a curb or sidewalk or whatever it
Yep.
is, it can start.
Then I mean, my personal opinion is I think going to 150 is too much. If you're starting right there, you just end up with a big slice of concrete, right?
If that's the case and we're starting at, I'm gonna call it the curb line or the parallel line to the automobile park. If we're starting there, then yeah, I mean, I'm saying maybe if that line that's shown there is 120, if you go from that corner up to the other corner, 135 I think would be enough.
Isn't the right-of-way measured from the center of the street into the property, because there always has to be room to build at sidewalks? Doesn't the village own 3 to 5 feet into everybody's property? So technically, the right-of-way would not be at the curb at some of these houses. Be 3, 4, 5 feet in.
Exactly, because if you put a sidewalk in, the right-of-way is usually on the home side of the sidewalk.
Look at the image up here from Walworth County GIS. It's a little hard to tell, but these lines right here are the right-of-way lines. They're yellow and black, dotted lines on my screen. It's hard to see, but you can tell here, obviously, there's the sidewalk. So it's, right on that side of the sidewalk. And then across the street, there's no sidewalk, but you can see there's enough space. Yes, it's from the center line.
So then the taper would, like in this diagram here, the taper would start from black and yellow line.
That's correct.
That doesn't give them as much room as we anticipated on the initial drawing.
But it still gives them 8 more feet than is currently in the ordinance.
Yeah, like if you look at that one, it's RSTO 00084, you can see they've got a taper. Based on this change, you'd be able to, that taper could start whatever that distance is.
Therefore, we don't need such a steep angle if we're starting 8 feet back. I believe the 135, 140 is way towards the 135, and like Matt says, we can always take a case-by-case scenario. If there's something that just doesn't work for somebody, I would rather not blanket it so large. I'd rather keep it more conservative.
And I'm fine with that. I just thought the initial thought of this whole thing was to get away from the mud pit and the gravel at the end of the driveway. And the ones I've seen that come off at 135, they still have the mud pit and the gravel. So potentially, if we keep it at 135, that issue will still be there. I was just trying to give them a little bit more leeway, a little bit more room, so maybe we don't have the gravel mud pit at the end of the driveway.
Entertain a motion, somebody would.
I'm sorry, the other thing I should have pointed out, if we're kind of done with that topic, the other thing is we added standard in section 3 of the draft ordinance, and this came at the staff level, and this came up during a review of a project. So modifying or adding language with regard to how off-street parking areas should be designed. And it all relates back to fire department access around a project. And it's subsection 14, the last page of the ordinance, calling for a standard. And this is all, engineering, civil engineering, but there's different trucks and they have different turning radiuses. So the fire chief is recommending that we use the WB50 turning template, and that would accommodate the largest fire apparatus truck that he has. And that will ensure that when a site is being designed, that the fire truck can pull in and pull out and be able to access the fire without getting stuck. That's the other part of this. And for what it's worth, again, the only thing that you're doing is, I'm specifying if you're happy with 120 or if you want it to be 135, whatever. But then the public hearing will be at the next month's meeting. And even at that point in time, I mean, you can make small tweaks in that number if you're so inclined. And, go from 135 or whatever to something larger or very small. But as long as you're in that ballpark, I guess what I'm saying is that even at the public hearing, I mean, you can tweak that number.
No, I was gonna say, I just did kind of an overlay with the 135 on this image, just looking at the light. The 135 coming from the right-of-way line is gonna be sufficient enough, fully sufficient enough. I don't think we need to degree that any more than what it is.
Everybody agree on 135?
You want a motion on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody.
So for what it's worth, it's just a simple motion to set the public hearing date for the proposed ordinance with the change as reflected.
I'll make a motion to recommend a public hearing, on this ordinance change for July 11th, 2022, and set for that in the ordinance, or the draft ordinance, 135 degrees.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're gonna go up to items 9 and 10, and Leon is not here.
Leon is on his way.
Okay. How much for longer?
I would guess in another 10 minutes he should be here.
Okay, let's, we'll go to item 15, recommendation for future agendas.
So on this, agenda, I forgot to include something we had talked about last month, and that was just a general discussion about, the potential of limiting franchise-type businesses in the downtown district. That was supposed to be on this agenda for a future item.
Could you give an example, please?
So, if McDonald's wanted to go to the old cobblestone site, brand new franchise, it looks like the old typical, McDonald's, the issue is that appropriate or not? And we're not here to debate that particular piece of property or that business, but essentially, there are, communities that, do that so that they get, a certain character within their downtown area, so it doesn't become franchise after franchise, and then you lose the core of your area.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Right. So again, it's just on the agenda for discussion. Some research will be done into other communities that have done that, how it's worked, where it's been applied, and you can talk about that policy choice at that time.
Any other items for future agendas? Okay, item 16, next meeting, July 11th, 6:30. And if needed, potential special meeting for June 20th at 5:30 or 6.
So this is in regards to a call that I got from the property owner that is right next to the cobblestone. Their sidewall is now exposed, and they wanted to get on this agenda, but it was way past the time. And I said, well, maybe what we can do is have a special meeting before the regular village board meeting. Because right now they've got tarps up there and water's leaking in and, they just wanna.
That was called the Opera House.
Okay. So if you're so inclined, I think they would appreciate that. Or available for a
To
quorum.
discuss specifically.
What's gonna be put on that side?
I will not be here on that day.
Everybody else?
Definitely, maybe.
Next Monday.
Next Monday at 5:30, could be at 6.
All right, so we've lost 3 people.
What about,
Can you join virtually? You got your
Who's-
smartphone? Okay.
So, I guess my question, and I don't wanna get too in-depth, because it's not really an agenda item, but are they wanting to modify things, or are they just wanting to button it up?
It's basically exposed. I mean, there is no
Right.
siding, there is no exterior
So
finish.
if they wanna re-side it, do
They
they
wanna
have to
re-side it.
have downtown design district review to add siding that matches what's there?
Oh, it wasn't there existing. It's my understanding that they wanna put some concrete down at the bottom to kind of fortify the sidewall.
yeah,
And that's not a concern. I mean, that can be done, it's not visible, it's not relevant to the appearance of the building. But when it comes to the upper sections, you know, I think you would wanna, you know, have it on the record that, yeah,
they had a walkthrough that they tore off the building that connected the cobblestone to the Opera House. And it never did have the same siding that the building did because of the
So-
structure.
So that is what you want to have approved, not the concrete piece, correct?
correct.
Have they submitted that as a site plan, or?
They've not submitted anything at this point in time. They're just hoping to schedule a meeting and then we can get the application materials.
I would say get the application materials and then we can schedule the special meeting.
We can try to
Okay.
fast track it for them.
Yeah, I don't mind fast tracking it, I don't like it at the village board or when I'm here, that we have things and it's like, well, I wanna talk about it. It's like, well, they can work with you all as staff to talk about it and figure it out, and
Right.
I wanna walk into the meeting knowing what I'm being asked to approve.
There will be an application, it'll be perfectly clear.
Okay, so I think once they have an application, let's figure out, maybe we just send an email out to everyone.
Okay.
And it could be when we're not at third base, a 15-minute Zoom meeting to do it and get it done, 'cause yeah, it is exposed. Okay, we're good on scheduling? Leon's still on his way? Coming from Beloit.
Okay, is
So-
there anything we can discuss while he's not here? Huh?
You mean for his application itself?
Sure.
Yeah, but I think we should start discussing it, don't you, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's any, you know, points of, you know, clarifications, we can handle those. If there's any issues you wanna talk about that I can't address, we'll just kind of jot those down when he's here and kind of narrow down the scope of what we're thinking about.
All
So
right.
yes,
So we'll go to item 9, amend conditional use to include, outdoor events and a pavilion for property located at 2511 Main Street, RA 2702000001, LD's Barbecue, Leon Davis owner, application 2022-17. I'll open the public hearing. Going once.
so we'll just keep the public hearing open, because
Okay.
Leon is part of that public hearing process.
Okay, we'll keep the public hearing, okay.
Yep. So maybe what I can do is just kind of give an overview of, you know, everything that's on the table here.
Please.
Okay. So essentially, there's 2 items on the agenda. The first is the conditional use amendment, and the second part is a more detailed layout of what that conditional use approval might look like in terms of location on the property. So essentially, proposing, an open pavilion, and he's not submitted the actual architectural renderings of that yet, because that's part of the site plan and plan of operation. But just in concept, he's looking at additional parking for, special events. The open air pavilion would be used for, you know, music and for people gathering and eating and so on and so forth. He is currently allowed under the current conditional use to have, music events in front of the building, and that would continue, and this would be a second venue or an expanded venue. And there's probably enough here for you to, take a final action or recommendation to the village board on the conditional use. But when it comes to the actual site plan itself, what he included is basically a concept drawing in terms of where the building is going to go. The parking has to be redesigned, and he knows that. He's working with a civil engineer to put together that parking plan. There are 2 existing sheds, and those are going to be relocated elsewhere in the property, so there's a better traffic flow on the property. And so the site plan is, probably halfway there in terms of details. So the recommendation is to put that on the back burner and table that to your next meeting. But if you're so inclined to, move forward with conditional use recommendation, and again, that goes to the village board.
Question on the proposed site plan picture that we're showing,
Yep.
we have here. The pavilion is going to pretty much be located where it's shown on the drawing, but the sheds and some other smaller items may be located in a different area?
So, with regard to the placement of the pavilion, essentially, again, we're talking about fire department access. If they pull in on the west side of the building, and if they, aren't able to, make that corner, the placement of the building might shift one way or the other. It might move, further to the east or further to the north, whatever. But that, yes, that is the general location. It's my understanding that it's a 3-sided, open-sided pavilion. The back portion of it is going to be used for some storage and for, food service, those kinds of things. He did have a rendering of that early on, but that wasn't, again, final. But that's the general concept. Obviously, he's got identified areas for motorcycle parking, which is apparently the bulk of the patrons that come to the music. So yes, things are generally where they're supposed to be, but they're not specific enough. Again, if you look at the center parking layout, it essentially blocks a car moving from one side of the property to the other. So there has to be some better, internal circulation on that.
Tim, I noticed that the driveway on the east side of the property, down Energy Drive, that is now staying. That's going, because that was a driveway here, this one.
Mm-hmm.
That was, originally they were talking about taking that out.
Correct.
But it's shown here, and I'm wondering now, because of the added traffic flow, are they gonna want that driveway there?
I believe the plan is still to take that out. The issue is basically the incline, and it's, Leon is saying it's not safe. He doesn't want people, driving too fast and getting hung up there. So yes, as far as I understand, that plan is still to pull that out. So with a site like that, he's got, 3 access points, and that's more than sufficient.
Is there a requirement as to where those sheds have to be located as part of the new site plan?
Well, they can't be, too close to the property boundary line, so we'll see what that is.
That building he wants to build, that looks like it's gonna be on where the, car wash used to be.
Essentially, pretty much the same footprint.
Yeah.
Yep. And maybe that was just a matter of convenience, like, well, let's just put it there, without thinking about the, the rest of the parking, the rest of the, internal circulation. So after we talked about it, he said, that doesn't make sense. And just by way of background, again, there were the 3 parcels here. There was a certified survey map that merged the 3 parcels into one, and that has been, or will be, recorded at the county courthouse. We're just dealing with the 1 parcel.
So on the agenda, you're saying item 10 is the one that should be tabled until you have, more detailed, complete site plan?
In terms of procedures with a conditional use, obviously, you know, you have to make certain findings, and they are part of the staff report, and they are also covered in the actual, conditional use order that's included as part of the application. And again, this would be a proposed amendment to the existing conditional use order. Everything else would remain unchanged.
We need to wait for Leon. Anybody have any questions for Leon? I'm going to close the public hearing. Entertain a motion on item 9.
All right, I will make a motion to recommend to the village board the approval of the conditional use subject to the terms in the draft conditional use order dated June 7th, 2022.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, item 10, I'll make a motion to table until, the applicant's ready to come back with a more complete site plan.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Well.